Hello students, welcome to Ashish Polala classes. Today in the present lecture, I am going to discuss with you part number 3 of salient feature of Indian Constitution. In this lecture, we are going to discuss the next salient feature. The first salient feature of this lecture is that Indian Constitution is a blend of rigidity and flexibility. Constitutions, from the amendment point of view, can be classified into two categories. They can be flexible constitutions or rigid constitutions. What is the meaning of flexible constitution? A constitution can be said to be flexible constitution when the provisions of that constitution can be amended or when the constitution can be changed very easily. That means to say that when the procedure for the amendment of the constitution is very simple, then at that time it can be said to be the flexible constitution. If we want to see the example of flexible constitution, then that example of flexible constitution can be taken from the British Constitution. The British Constitution is very easy to change. On the other hand, a constitution is said to be the rigid constitution when it is very difficult to amend the provisions of that constitution. That means to say, when there is complex procedure which is involved for the amendment of the constitution, then the constitution is said to be rigid constitution. If we want to see the example of rigid constitution, then the example of rigid constitution can be taken from American Constitution. The provisions of American Constitution are very rigid, which are not easy to change. But if we see our India, then in India, the constitution can be amended under the provisions of Article 368. That means to say the provision in relation to amendment of constitution has been provided in Article 368. Some provisions of Indian constitutions are such which can be amended by simple majority, whereas there are some provisions of Indian constitution which requires the complex procedure for amendment. That means when special majority is needed for the amendment of that provisions. So we can say that our Indian constitution is neither the flexible constitution nor the rigid constitution. It is a unique blend of rigidity and flexibility because some provisions of Indian constitution can be amended by simple majority, whereas some provisions of Indian constitution require the complex procedure for their amendment. The next salient feature of Indian constitution is that in India there is a system of federation, but with strong centralizing tendency, which concept has been taken by India from the Canadian Constitution. In our India, the Constitution of India sets up a federal system of government in which there is a division of powers between the central and state government. However, the central government is stronger in comparison to the state government. This foundation for a federal setup for the nation was laid down in the Government of India Act 1935 itself. That means to say, this provision is not a new provision which is added in the Constitution of India. This provision was already laid down in the Government of India Act 1935. It is not said by me, it is said by the Supreme Court of India in the case of Professor Yashpal versus State of Chhattisgarh, AIR 2005, Supreme Court 2026. Federation is a way in which unit governments can be protected against the domination by the central government. There are number of features of federation which are existing in our constitution. First of all, what are the various features and that are existing in our Indian constitution? A federal constitution should be the written constitution, and our Indian constitution is a written constitution. A federation constitution, in federal constitution, the supremacy lies with the constitution. In our India, the supremacy lies with the Indian constitution. No organ of the government is supreme in comparison to the Indian Constitution. Indian Constitution is supreme among all the organs of the government, whether it is the legislature, executive, or judiciary. All are subordinate to our Indian Constitution. In federal constitution, there is a division of power between the central and state government. In our Indian Constitution, it also provides for the division of power between the central and state government. The federal constitution should be the rigid constitution, which should be difficult to amend. In our constitution, there are number of provisions which provides for the complex procedure for their amendment. So Indian constitution can also be regarded as to be the rigid constitution to certain extent. In federal constitution, the judiciary should be independent. It should not be under the control of either legislature or executive. In our India, independent judiciary has been provided in our constitution. In federal government, there must be a system of bicameralism in which law should be passed by at least two houses. In our Indian constitution, there is a concept of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha for passing these central laws. So in our India, the system of bicameralism has also been adopted. So from these angles, we can say that in our India, there are number of features of federation, but this is not enough to know, because it is also very important to note here that Constitution of India also contain a large number of unitary or which can be said to be non-federal features. Some of those unitary features are as follows. Number A, in our India, if we compare the center with the state government, then we can say that central government is supreme in many respects. So first non-federal feature of Indian Constitution is that in our India, there is strong center. Secondly, in our India, there is only single citizenship, and that single citizenship is related with the Indians. We cannot say that the state has a different citizenship. In our India, there is single citizenship for the Indians, irrespective in which state he is living. In our India, number of provisions can be amended very easily. There is flexibility of the constitution, which is a non-federal feature of Indian constitution. In our India, there is integrated judiciary. If we see that from the lower court to the Supreme Court, there is same hierarchy of all the states. So we can say that it is also a unitary or non-federal feature of Indian constitution. In our India, the state governor are appointed by the central government, by the president. So this is also a non-federal feature. In our India, there is a concept of all India service. If we see that IAS officer, IPS officer, IRS officer, or IFS officer, they all are belonging of all India service. In our India, there is the provision of emergency provision. The emergency provision can be national emergency, state emergency, or financial emergency. In emergency provision, center becomes more powerful in comparison to the state government, and number of other non-federal features are existing in our Indian constitution. So what we can say about Indian constitution? Hence, we can say that Indian constitution is neither the federal nor the unitary constitution. It is a quasi-federal or quasi-unitary or federal in form but unitary in spirit, or federation with a strong centralizing tendency, and so on. The next salient feature of Indian constitution is that in our India, what type of government is that? In our India, there is a parliamentary form of government. The Indian constitution establishes a parliamentary form of government both at the center and state levels. This parliamentary form of government has been taken from UK constitution. What are the various essential features of parliamentary form of government? They are, first of all, in parliamentary form of government, the head of the state is merely a constitutional head. And secondly, the main executive, the executive vested with the real power, is made answerable to the legislature. Now let us see that whether in our Constitution of India these features are existing or not. If we see article number 74 of Indian Constitution, then under article 74, the President of India is a constitutional head of India who will act only with the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers in the discharge of his function. And secondly, under Article 75 of Indian Constitution, it has been laid down that the Council of Ministers is collectively responsible to the House of People for their functionings. This pattern has also been adopted in the states with little modifications. So these are next three salient features of Indian Constitution. For the next salient feature, we will see the next video. Thank you very much.